All right, welcome back. We are MDEV1001. That's Mobile Data Management in the summer 2023 semester at Georgian, and it's week 9, part 1 of our broadcast and recording. And this week on the docket, we have full CRUD with MongoDB and on the back end. And when I say that, it's almost like when we do full CRUD, it's a MongoDB API with MongoDB Atlas that is built for you, right? So you'll be building one, hopefully, in your API and frameworks course next semester, okay? Won't be with me, but hopefully they'll do the same thing that I've kind of put together, which is using different things. And so you'll see the same thing happening with Firebase. We'll be talking about Firebase soon as well. And we'll talk about, okay, so now that we've done, it's like 3 different platforms, really, at the end of the day. Local storage, we're doing MongoDB, which is very popular. Again, you can replace MongoDB with any API or even MySQL if you really wanted to. And then Firebase. You know, I find that just MySQL is less and less being used for mobile apps, and that's why I haven't introduced it. But I did talk about it, at least from a 30,000 feet perspective in the beginning. So marching on, last week we talked about connecting and reading, kind of making a simple user interface and reading, do read operations from the API. That was easy, I think. And this week, now this is where the fun starts. We need to take our UI and go back to that UI we had in week 4, right? And then kind of reutilize that same UI. So again, we're not trying to rebuild the UI now. We're going to use the same UI we made, very simple. But in order for us to do full CRUD with an API that's been given to us. Okay, so that's different. Now for the assignment, you won't have to do this. Okay, for the assignment, you will simply, for assignment 3, it'll follow last week's, closer to last week, but you'll be using OMDB. And again, I'll give you the details around that very shortly. But again, I mean, if you just went to OMDB, took a look at their structure, and made your assignment run from that, so you don't have to wait, you will have 99% of everything you need for your assignment 3. Okay, so I'm just telling you that's the thing I'm doing. But only read operations, because OMDB does not allow you to enter new movies, right? It doesn't allow you. So if that's the truth, then, well, what do you do, right? So that's what we're doing here with, that's why I've given you an API that you can work with. And this is going to be, I'm building up to something that you're going to be putting together for assignment 4. That's what I'm doing with these little in-class exercises. This is my idea, right? So that you'll have a bigger kind of app that you'll be working with on the back end. Now, the great thing about this is that it should dovetail nicely with things that are happening in your other courses. I'm hoping that that's going to happen. Let's talk about administratively some things right now that things have to, things that are happening that have to change. Your course survey feedback is out, right? And again, I'd appreciate you guys giving feedback for the course, the program, all that kind of stuff. If you want more of this type of content, if you like, certain things, talk about it. If you don't like certain things, talk about it. The idea is that it's going to go, we're going to probably do a program review very shortly, and then, kind of get it to the point where, the whole program needs to be just a bit changed here and there. But for the most part, it's supposed to offer you a chance to, really be good at mobile development. That's what this program is all about. So give feedback. This is your first semester, and next semester you'll have another survey. It's once a semester. You get a chance to talk about stuff. I would encourage you guys to be honest, but also be constructive when you give feedback to your professors, because I think it's important for you to do that. I know sometimes it's about marks for some of you, because that's what's important. But I think, for me, it's more important about learnings, because if you don't have learning, who cares about the marks? I understand that we all have to pass, but for most of you, I don't think that's an issue. I don't think that passing is going to be a problem for most things. I think it's not about that. It's about what you're learning and how you're learning it. So talk about those courses, give feedback. If you don't like how things are being presented to you, or if you really like certain things about how things are being presented to you, then please talk about them in your course survey feedback for all of your courses. I encourage that. And the only way we're going to change is you have the power to make that change, not me, right? I can recommend, right? I know that from my perspective how it works, but I'm a single voice And you guys have many voices, right? So you have way more power than me when it comes to change. So please make sure you, you fill that out. Okay, take the time. It won't take long. I think it might be like 10 minutes, or whatever. But there's always opportunities for you to fill in, your comments and all that stuff. So that's what I want to talk about from an admin perspective. Let's talk about in-class exercise 8 and the goals. Again, we'll want to create a UI in iOS to perform full CRUD. Again, I pull you back to Android from last week. If you did your in-class exercise 7 last week, then all you're doing is taking that in-class exercise 7 and modifying it to make in-class exercise 8. Please don't start a brand new Android app, is what I'm saying, okay? Like, continue, all right? That's what I want you to do. So, because I'm getting you to do both, and I'm getting you to do both for a couple of reasons. One, this course is about data management. It's not about iOS or Android or a native platform of any kind. And so my intent for this thing is for you guys to learn about data management, right? That's what it's about. Not necessarily the platform. The platform is just a vehicle to deliver your data. That's all I'm using it for. So it's not like I need you to learn about iOS specifically or Android. It's not about that. It's about, I want you to have in your head at the end of this course, what is possible. That's what I want you to do. Because one of the problems we have when we code is we don't know what we can do. We have no idea what's possible in the platform we're working with, Android, iOS, React Native, if we do game development, whatever. We have no idea what's possible, right? And so when we do these little like hello world apps, like your calculator, like some kind of shopping list, like some kind of to-do app or something like that, right? Then we start learning what's possible on all the apps and what the approach that you're going to use for each one of them, right? Which is very different between the two, by the way. iOS, you should know by now, after we're in week 9, you should have a very good grounding now and to know that what you like, right? And what you don't like and why you don't like it. So here, I'm going to ask you guys, since you're here, before we move on. iOS, Hitesh, do you like it? Okay, and do you like it more than Android? Why? You should know that answer. Why? If you're going to ask in an interview, what? Why is it?
It doesn't need too many fragments, too many files.
Okay, all right. So, how about an alternative opinion? Who likes Android more than iOS? Okay, so Eric, what do you like? And I'll ask you next. What do you like it more?
I actually like the more modular design of Android.
There you go.
Fragment
Okay, so
part. I prefer having a little bit more direct control to the magic black box, but I feel that iOS is a lot of that.
and let's talk about that black box. So black box, actually this is the topic in trusts that I'm doing a course actually that I'm doing. Black box and white box thinking, right? So black box, again, it's like when you drive a car, right? The car drives and you really don't know how the engine works. Not really, right? And so, but it's going to drive. You have your controls, and those limited controls are safe enough for you to use to get from A to B. Black box, right? White box is like, and this is how it works, and this is why we do it, right? iOS doesn't do that so much. They don't do the white box stuff. They do like, this is where we're doing it. It's more forward thinking, and this is all better, and all that kind of stuff. But they're obfuscating all the details. They're kind of burying all those details. You can't see an XML file for your design, okay? But it exists. It does exist. If you actually look deep enough, you'll see it. It's XML. When you use you do a storyboard. That's what it is, right? I would like to see it. I'm the kind of person that likes to see everything. I want to have access to every aspect of my app. I want to be able to program my app through XML or through drag and drop or a mix of both. That's just me. And this is why there's that part of Android I like more. The constraint system of Android, easier. All right, iOS, messed up all the time. It's like, why is this working? It should work. Yeah, And yes, there are ways to make it easier. You can add different things to make iOS easier, but that's just me. How about React Native? Well, I'll ask you about React Native. Like it? Do you not like it?
Yeah, I like React Native because it's based on JavaScript.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty much familiar with it and I'm more comfortable with it.
Okay, and you like that more than iOS or Android?
Yes, I
See?
so I like React Native, working with React Native.
Yeah.
It's fun, I guess.
And a lot of people don't like it at all, right? They don't like using React Native whatsoever. They like rather use native tools, iOS or Android, Swift or Kotlin. So yeah, that's the thing with it. So you should know at this point in the program how you sit. And so one thing you should also know is that making apps is hard. A lot of pieces, right? A lot of modules, like you were saying, right? So a lot of things to plug in and stuff like that. And there's a design aspect, right, that you guys should, also be starting to understand. There's some stuff that, how to make an interface is not just about, dragging and dropping buttons and labels. Okay, it's like, hey, there's a philosophy to it, right? And so that's something that you should be learning as well. So this course is not that. This course is not like a how to do everything course. This is a course that we're using those other courses, just to be clear. Because I know I've gotten feedback that, like, you're asking us to do both iOS and Android, but we've never done Android before, because I'm taking this course part-time. That's possible. And I don't know how to do it, is this course, why do we need the other course if I have your course? Because you're teaching us both iOS and Android, and I don't really need to do that. I just need to know data management. Okay, well, you can't do data management in the vacuum. Okay, it's not possible, right? So that's why we're doing it this way. So a little bit of housekeeping, just to talk about that. So going back to this, your Android project is something that I want you to continue with. I don't want you to, this is not really like a project, it's an example app that you're making so you understand the underlying principles of data management, how it works in Android compared to iOS. Focus on those things, as opposed to making your app pretty, right? If it works and it's fairly as good and refined as we make for iOS, good. Okay, I don't need it to be pretty necessarily, although it needs to be functional. All right, so that's what I did. Some other things that I want to talk about. I don't know about you, but I was really tired of my old system, so I got myself a Mac Studio. All right, so I finally did it. Bit the bullet. And all the stuff that I've been telling you to do with either getting a Mac Studio or a Mac Mini is exactly what I just took my own advice. And it wasn't because it was a money issue before. That wasn't the reason why I didn't want to do it, although that did play a factor. It was because I felt it was okay for what my intent was, the output, but I can't abide by a really slow computer. It drives me nuts. Right? Especially when I'm spending 6 hours programming on it, right? I can't. If it's going to mess up or crash or whatever, I want to strangle the computer, and the computer's not a person, thank God, right? So that's what I did, and I did that because for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to run fairly fast when I launch a project, and two, sometimes because my machine was a little old, 2015. Right, then my version of Xcode might be slightly different than yours, which causes a problem. I don't want that anymore. So that's why I've updated. So we shouldn't have an issue. I've noticed, speed differentials that are crazy. So like compared to what we did before. And when I first got it and I powered it up, I was like, something wrong? Because it just instantly opened. Like instant. Like I couldn't believe it. Now I didn't get the most expensive Mac Studio. There's many versions of it, but it's a couple $1,000, let's just say. So it's probably about $2,600. This is the one that you buy. It's got the M2 Pro Max, right? So it's pretty good. So I should be at the same speed as you or faster. That was my intent. Okay. Again, when I was buying the thing. Okay. So on that, then, what I want to do is what we did last time, which is I want to look at a previous project. So these are some of the previous projects folders we had before, and we had in-class exercise, 4, 5, and 6. 4 is where we actually had that dual interface. 6 or 7 last week is where we actually started going to, work on an API. That's what we did, but 5 and 6, the problem with working with 5 and 6, if I was to go from that, is because, they include authentication pages that I don't need yet, right? So I didn't want to go there. And that's why I think probably 4 is probably a good place to grab some stuff from. I do want to duplicate 7 because we had some stuff. However, and if we look back at my stuff here just for a second, and I'm just going to come out of the full screen view for a second just to go into this. However, I did add a couple of gists, and this is where my work came into it. Okay, this part right here. These gists took a bit to figure out because of what I wanted them to do. And again, you won't see the work that's involved. Good. You won't see the work that's involved. But I tested them and they should work, right? So I think what I want to start with is, let's go back to that little computer now. I don't know if it's so little anymore. But what I want to do now is I want to copy in-class exercise 7 on the iOS side and make a copy of it. So I'm going to kind of do a Command C, Command V, right? Yeah. What? You actually heard that sound? Was that you?
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't hear that sound. That wasn't me. Right? But you can see that much improved speed, right? So no delays. I'm not going to get a wheel or anything like that. I don't know about you, but that day we lost, thing, I was just going to pull my hair out, right? So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that again. So this is in class exercise 8. However, just like we've done before, what we need to do is pull this. I recommend pulling this into a Visual Studio Code, thing. And I'm just going to kind of drag and drop it into VS Code, the entire project. And the reason for this is because I find that using VS Code as an editor to edit the project files itself allows me visibility into some of the stuff that we couldn't get. For example, this project right here should be renamed. So this project folder, right, as an example, we want to rename it. So I'm just going to right click and rename here, but you could, kind of, that's the first thing I'm going to change this to ICE 8. I'm also going to change this. I'm going to rename this one again, just like we did before. So it's going to be ICE 8. I also have some other weird feedback that I got, which was, Professor, how come you remote in anyway? Why don't you just bring your machine in? That's what I got, right? And yeah, that's definitely a thing I could do. But I find that running a full machine as opposed to running a laptop, actually, there's a lot of great things about that, right? So here's ICE 7, and I'm just going to replace it with ICE 8. This is the first file, so you guys should do that too. And you don't need me to talk, but there's 19 replacements here in this file here, this project.pbxproj, right, that allow you to do things. I find that this method of doing stuff, although exhaustive, is more accurate because, as an example, what it does for me is make sure that everything else is going to function when I load this project up for the first time, compared to if I try and load it and do it in Swift and in Xcode. Xcode and Swift just simply do not work properly when you do it this way. Okay, like if you're trying to rename the project. I also find the same thing with Android. If you try and start a project with Android and copy paste, right, there's some challenges with configuration, right? The build configuration messes up, and I don't like it. That's just me, right? So that's why I'm showing it to you this way. And other people may not like that, right? Because if you talk to the professors, like, oh, why did he show you that way? There's an easier way of doing it. Yes, there's always other ways of doing things. But I find that this is the most reliable way, because this way, if I go through it, the list, then you know what? I'm pretty much guaranteed that it's going to work compared to, here it is, one replacement, compared to it maybe work the other way and a lot more headaches. So now I'm done. So now I've kind of went through and, kind of find, replace all ICE 7s for ICE 8s, and I'm good, right? So to demonstrate this, I can close down my Visual Studio Code now, and I can open up Xcode. Here's Xcode, and I can open ICE 8, right? So this is ICE 8. I can say open a project or file, and I can go to my desktop and go to ICEs. How about that? Let's try that again. I said I can go to my desktop. Not the simulator, Xcode. And I can open up, that's just me being a bad person. I can open up my ICE 8 and click open, and then it should just work. Instant, right? That's what I like. Zero delay, poof, it's gone, it's ready to go, right? And that's how I like to work anyway. And if I was working in, I don't know if also you noticed that my whole screen, right, which is different than before, right? Why? Because I was using a laptop and my resolution on the Retina display was very high. Here, there's no screen. It literally is a box that's this big, and it goes underneath my router, and it's plugged directly into my router. That's all I have, nothing else, right? So because of that, my screen will adjust to fit my remote, and it just works perfectly. It's exactly what I want. All right, I know I'm raving about it, but there's a reason. So, okay, so now that I have ICE 8 and it's working, of course, we always want to, before we make any changes, just run it to make sure that it works. Let's make sure that there's a couple things that I noticed when I ran it at home that was important to figure out. One, main storyboard must be iPhone 14 Pro Max. That's what I've been using. And make sure you select, kind of what you want to run with this thing altogether. So if there's a problem, at least you know if it's going to fail on us. So here, notice at the top, instantly there's a problem. It should not be iPhone 14 Pro. It should be iPhone 14 Pro Max on both sides, because at least, and if you're going to go with just 14 Pro, then just do both 14 Pro. The size class and also the simulator should be the same. And by the way, it's the same thing with Android. If you were going to try and target a Google Pixel with Android's, design, and then meanwhile your AVD is like something else, it's not going to look the same, right? So, so that's where I caution you. So then just run it and make sure that it works. That's the first thing I do. So I run it, and then let's see what happens, and it should kick off the emulator pretty good. Instant, right, is what I said, right? And that's pretty good, because now we can see those things. You can see that these are the. Why are you laughing, Indu? Is it?
You're so proud of it.
You're damn right, right? You spend $3,000. There's like, you know what? There's I got 3,000 reasons to be proud. All right, I'm a proud daddy is what I am. Okay, so what was that?
Now your bottleneck is just the internet.
Actually, my bottleneck is me. Is what it is, right? That's my bottleneck, and that's how it should be, in my opinion. Okay, so. All right, back to this. So then now that we have that, let's put that up on GitHub. And I'm going to go to the first thing we're going to do is just teleport in there and make sure it happens. Oh, this was fun. When I was resetting up everything again, I have a smaller hard drive. I only had 512 gigabytes on this thing out of the box. That's what they had at Apple. And they were like, you can whatever, if you want to, we can send it to you in a week or two. And I was like, nope, I'm just going to take this one. And I figured out how much junk I had from basically upgrading from one version to the other. One Mac OS version to the next Mac OS version, I just got slower and slower and slower, and my file system got fatter and fatter and fatter as I kept adding. And I was loath to just get rid of everything, and now that's not a problem. So I'm slimmer in that way. With this thing, and that's pretty good. So I'm going to go CD space, and I'm going to go into this one right here. And I'm just going to do a git add dot, git commit -m, and I'm going to say added, project files for ICE 8. Okay, so that's what's going to happen, and then git push. Again, the intent is super fast, no delay, and everything's good. Indu, am I right? Am I right, Indu? Right? Am I as fast as you?
No.
Huh?
Yeah.
You're faster?
No.
Oh, okay.
You're
I-
way faster. My simulator took a lot of time. Yours was
Right?
Yours was instant.
Mine says that Git. So like that GitHub
Yeah.
desktop
Ugh.
up there.
Oh.
It's terrible. Command line's the way to go. All right, so but I had fun downloading iTerm, reinstalling iTerm again, reinstalling Homebrew, reinstalling all those things. I went through it again, and then I realized there was a lot of garbaggio, like here and there, that I had in my old system that I fixed. So everything works exactly how I want it now. And I mean, even running things like, you know what, which is really awesome, Blender, all right? I don't know if you guys have seen Blender. Instant! That's faster than my actual system,
That's
all right?
impressive.
Come on, all right?
Oh my god.
Like
That's
I'll
wild.
tell you that when it comes to, you know, to that kind of stuff, my home system, which is an i9 10900K with 32 gigs of RAM and an RTX 3070, can't launch that fast. And I have like an M.2 that screams, right? And so I think Mac is, you know, Apple's done the right things, you know, for them to get to this point. I think they've made a competitive system. I was in doubt. You know, when they first came out with the M1, I was like, I don't know, I'll wait till the next version, right? And when I saw them coming up with like dual chips and all that kind of stuff, I was like, okay, I don't know. And then the Studio kind of interested me, and then they had the Pro, and I was like, no, I'm not spending $10,000, you know, minimum. But the Studio was interesting because it was kind of in the middle step, you know, between the other computers, and because all of us have screens, like my screen is probably as good as any Studio that I can buy, you know, for whatever, right? So I use I literally have a 42-inch monitor that I use as my home base, right? So yes, and it's 4K and it's everything that I need. It's not 8K, but you know, who makes 8K stuff anyway? And so when I get stuff done, it's like super awesome, and it's really, really big in front of me. I'm an old guy. I need like things to be bigger now, right? So then when I got this thing, it was like, wow. Okay, so now that we've done our copy paste, let's stop talking about this thing. I can talk about it all day, right? How happy I am. You know, even the financing was pretty easy too, which is good, right? So, okay, so we have this, and what we want to do is we want to add another view controller. Now, some strategies around this, right? Do we want to rename everything first? How would you do the copy? I want to bring in, now you've done it a couple times, right? So this is not your first rodeo when it comes to this. What do you do first? Do you bring in your view controller? Do you bring in the view controller file first? What do you recommend? You've done it. I want you to give me feedback. What do you want me to do first? The actual controller, like the
I like the board.
the user interface first?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone does things differently, all right? So to me, I think it's the other way around, but I'll do what you tell me to do. And the reason why I say it's a lot of times the other way around is better is because, you know, of the changes. One thing we missed, I got to talk about this also, in our movie model, is we have our movie ID, but we don't have an underscore ID. The reason why we need the underscore ID, which is not part of our movie model typically, is because underscore ID is part of MongoDB, right? MongoDB doesn't use our movie ID, neither did our core data, right? It had its own ID that was hidden, right? So our ID, our underscore ID, doesn't exist here, and we need it, because if I was going to select an item in the list, I want the ID, the actual ID of that item, to go to the next screen, not my movie ID, which makes no sense. I mean, I could search by movie ID, I just didn't make my API like that, right? It really depends on how you make your API anyway, right? My API on the background, the way it works is it uses the object ID, which we talked about in MongoDB, right? All right, so that is what we did. So there's your movie ID. And so we need to modify this as well, and I'll do that afterwards. So my feeling is there's a couple changes we want to make. One, we want to modify this. I've also provided a couple of gists, so let's go into that. I'm just going to use iOS's Chrome here, so I'm going to do that too. So let's go into github.com/gist for me. So you can see all my gists. The one I made today it's called Movie CRUD View Controller. So it's slightly differently named. And the reason why I want to start with this one and with the other one is because it has pretty much everything you need to get going, right? So I'm going to start with that first change. Like I said, I'm going to go back to this one, and then in here, I'm going to say that let underscore ID be of type string. Okay, that's kind of an important change to make, right? So this is our movie model changing to also include this. A couple of things you may have noticed that is weird, right, is that studio, genre, director, writer, and actors, all of those, genre, directors, writers, and actors are all array of strings. Now, how do you represent an array of strings in an interface? Either you parse them. So I have an array of strings, I just comma separate them. That's one way of doing it. And the other question is, we talked about this last time, is this is not normalized, right? Because from a normalization perspective, you should have genre 1, genre 2, genre 3, genre 4, how many genres you have, right? Or maybe a separate genre table, right? And then you have the genre ID, right? So then you just add the genre ID as a thing, and then it's easy for you, to kind of correlate. We're not doing relationships, right? Because we're mobile apps, right? So could I? Yes. I'm not doing that. And we have an array of strings, so that's interesting. And the reason why that's interesting is because our API also gives us an array of strings back, right? So that's why we need it. However, when we are making our user interface, as you're going to see today, it's just going to be a string that we're going to parse and turn into an array of strings to send back to our API. Our API can take both separate strings, one big string, and it'll make it into an array of strings, or it can take, like that's the way I've written it, or it can take an array of strings directly, right? If you can produce that. You can't produce that, an array of strings, right now, if you had a web interface. Web interface, you'd have like a single form, you put in your stuff, and they would be like one string with a bunch of different things, right? So you can't do that. So we take that string and then cut it up and make it into an array of strings. We're not using a user interface like that because iOS has the ability to use an array of strings compared to something like the web, and the API is supposed to be flexible enough to be used with the web, with Android, or with iOS. And this is one thing that might be a wrinkle, I'm going to put it out there to you guys, when you program this on the Android side, because it's going to deal with it differently than iOS, slightly. Okay, I don't know if you guys had a problem with that the last time when you used retrofit and Moshi. I'm hoping you guys did that. Did you? Any issues?
I absolutely forgot about that. But I just made an array list
Yeah,
of
I also made a list.
Right, but I'm saying there's some things in here. Maybe you didn't think about it, but I'm telling you it's going to affect us. So this is the first change I want to make. So I want to save that. Save and then the next thing I want to do is I want to rename our movie view controller, right? So I'm going to go here into our movie view controller, and I'm going to right click and refactor rename to help us, to save us some time. And I'm going to call this the movie CRUD view controller, right? And the reason why I call it movie CRUD is so we have another gist that's separate than the other one. CRUD view controller. And it also renames the file instantly, right? So it does it once. And also what it does is in the, one thing it also does for us is in the main storyboard, it associates, if I bring up our inspector for the view controller, it associates the movie CRUD view controller instantly, so I don't have to do that work. Okay, that's why I did that. Okay, did this break anything? Because we added _ID. And if I launch it, again, remember, we're going to take little baby steps like this to show you this. I want to replace this. And if you launch it, does it still work? And the answer should be yes. Okay, so everything should work right now. So that's the first thing. So change the model. Since we changed the model back to iterm, I'm going to say git commit -m. And we'll say updated movie model. Git push. Okay, so that our movie model has been updated. Okay, does yours not work?
It didn't auto update everywhere. But I just,
When you did a right-click refactor rename?
yeah,
That's weird.
I don't know.
It should.
Let me
I
make
learned
sure
this
that
today.
but
What was that?
I didn't know this.
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, and you learned something new. I don't know. So that's good. I feel honored. All right, let me continue. Yeah. So next part is, now that we have we've done that, now there's the thing to do. We do need our other view controller, which is our add edit view controller normally, right? But I made another one. I called it something else. What I called it was, if I go back to me, right? And if I look at the gists that I have here, I have something called add edit movie view controller. It's another one, right? And the reason why I wanted to do this is I didn't want to mess up your other one, just in case you wanted to look at the previous one that had core data. These are different ones. This is for API and the other one's for core data. And we're going to have another one, yet another one for Firebase, which is going to be completely different again, right? And so you can see the three different versions. You can compare between one and the other. So here I'm going to grab this part and I'm just going to go raw here and just select all, copy it, and I want to, what was that? And I'm going to go in, I'm going to add it in a second. It's called add edit movie view controller is what we're going to say. Okay, so I'm going to go here and add a new file. So new file, cancel, new file. Nope. See, I'm just clicking on it just randomly. So fast. I'm not even used to how fast it is. Okay. I want to use Swift. And I'm going to call this the add edit movie view controller. I know these are long names. Some people also say, like, do we need to make these names this long? The answer is no. But I like to do it because it makes sense to me. Add edit movie view controller is here, and then I can just paste it in. So that's the add edit movie view controller. You can see that there's a lot of things that are here. And I'm going to talk about all the technologies here that we've done things differently. And this is what the scope is of this thing. First, we have all of our changes. And next, once we have it added in, then we make changes. Next, okay, our movie view, our movie CRUD view controller. One thing it didn't change is the name of my file. I don't know why it didn't do that. Going back to what you were saying. Movie CRUD view controller. That should have changed there too. Movie CRUD view controller. So I've added edit this one, but I also want to change this one, and that comes back to my gist again. And then just go back to that gist. So I have the movie CRUD view controller, which is this one, and it is different. And I'm going to talk about what it does different than the other one. And this is where all the work came from, making this all work. So again, I'm going to select all and Control V, and hopefully Command V, and hopefully all the outlets are going to be preserved. Now we have some errors, all right? And if I go to the errors, you're going to see that it says cannot find add edit view controller in scope, and that's because this should be called add edit movie view controller. So please make sure that if it's in there, that's something I didn't change in the gist. I forgot to do that. I renamed it last minute. Okay, so there should be no errors. File, save. Now I want to add in, I want to do a bit of a repository break. So I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say updated files, because we basically added some files. Git push. I could have done 2 commits there. One for the movie CRUD view controller, and the other one from the add edit movie view controller. Okay. I'm mentioning this because, and why is it giving me git status? Okay. I just wanted to have I just made another little commit just to keep myself on track. Okay, so now that I've got all those things in, now is the time for us to copy paste our UI. All right, this is how I would do it. So I'm going to go back to my storyboard, and again, I know there's errors. It will not run at this point, okay, because I made some changes, and stuff that we need for our favorite movies, we do need a little button, right, for adding a movie. We do need to be able to do swipe gestures and stuff. I've built that into the movie CRUD view controller, right? I've built that in. So it's all the code that you need is there. Now it's just a matter of getting our user interfaces down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select, and this is the part that you may elect to do first, like you said, Eric, or later. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, but I might select something like ICE4 for this. All right, so maybe the right ICE4 would be good, not that one. Maybe our ICE4 for this course. There we go. So here's ICE4. Why ICE4? Because if I launch ICE4 here, you can see that the main storyboard should have, is it ICE4? Maybe ICE5. Let's try that again. Is it ICE5? Okay. ICE5. I don't know why I was thinking. Oh, I know why, because it wasn't renamed. Haha. Here's ICE4.
Yeah,
ICE5.
It's ICE5 called ICE4.
Inside of it, yeah. So this is it. So a couple things to note when we have to look at this stuff. And I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see it. So one, we have a couple of strategies here for this. One of them is this button. So this is a button that I could bring across, right? The button, remember that whenever we bring user interface items around, they already have their connections. It's a positive thing, right? So that's why I want to bring it across. So I'm going to grab this button and then control. Well, actually, what I like it to go is here and grab it from here. I mean, everyone's different. I find that just it's a little better. Switching between views, kind of thing. When I switch to, because we're both using Xcode, there's a convenient switcher route right here that you can do when you're using both. I'm going to switch here so you can see I'm going to switch back to this and then click on the view, right, where I want to click on here, and then I want to go Command V or paste, one of those two things. I should see the button come into play. Okay, there's my button. One thing that you're also going to see is the button is named correctly and all that stuff. I'm just going to zoom in here just to align the button properly. So here's my button, and I'm just going to bring it where I want it. I noticed last time when we did this interface the last time, there were some issues, and when I went over it again, no one complained about them. I was like, okay. No one complained about these issues that I found when I did it again, right? So it's just, whatever. I'm going to drag this over to the side. So this is where I'm just using my blue guides there, and I'm also going to drag this part over here. I'm going to undo that change. I inadvertently dragged stuff that I didn't want to. I want to go and different when you stand up and different when you're sitting down, that's for sure. I want to kind of put that in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to align this so that it's centered. So it's kind of going to be there, right? And so I have this button, and now what I want to do is I'm going to bring up the assistant editor just to see, do I still have the connections with everything, right? Because I've been monkeying around with stuff. I recopied the entire view controller. Again, my idea is I don't want the user interface to stop me from coding, which can happen, right? Because you're like, why isn't this working? Well, you disconnected everything. That's why, Tom, right? So make sure that things are connected. So this one should be connected to the table. You can see that that's still a connection, right? And if I scroll down, you should see that in our code here, just like we had the last time, there should be a IB action that's connected, and it is not. See that? So let's command or control drag here. So now when I hover over, you see that there's a connection. It's a very important thing to do. We're going to have to do these fixes, one thing after the other. All right, so just be aware that that's what's going to happen. Now this is different than how we had it before, because you notice last time we did it, we copied the interface first and then automatically somehow made its connections. That's what's going to happen now when I make the new view controller. So I made my connections. This is what I wanted to do there, and then let's just close down the assistant editor. All right. Nice. There's still issues, and part of the issues are going to be. constraints. What's going on? You guys are killing me with these sounds, all right? All right, so next, let's add in what Eric wanted to do, which is, which I don't, by the way, any way is okay, as long as you make it work at the end, okay? I'm just trying to make it easier, that's all. So view controller, so what I want to just grab a regular view controller and bring it in, right? So here's my view controller. And then what I think it's an important thing to do is kind of drag it in here. We know that what we did last time was we had a segue to go from one view controller to the other, right? That's what we had. And the segue was a show segue, not a detail segue, right? We'll make it a detail segue this time just to make it different. And what I did was to do that, I had a segue to go from one thing to the other thing. But before we do any segues, we want to make that association that associates this new user interface with the view controller that we already have. So again, I want to make sure you click on this view controller right here where it says view controller, and then I want you to go over here and open this up, and then go to the identity inspector and pull down the add edit movie view controller. That is the association. So then it changes the name that's over here in the outliner, okay? That is what we need to do first, okay? So now we've added our second empty controller, and then we can make our segue. All right, now segue can be made any time, but we know we need one, so we're going to do it. And the way I did it is I kind of clicked on the view controller itself right here, and then I kind of did a control drag from, not from there, from the view. That's what I had done last time. From the view itself, when this is all clicked, I did a control drag to bring it over here to this thing. And then you can see clearly that that doesn't work. Okay, how about if I did this, and if I said, well, I want to grab, this thing, and I want to bring it across somehow, right? Either way, if you did this, if you kind of, selected the table view, and then did a control drag and did this, it's going to be the same thing, right? So that's not the way to do it. So what is the way to do it? Well, what we did last time was we did this. We said, take your movie view controller, and then control drag inside the outline like this, right? And you can move from one view controller to the other. That's okay, right? And then if you see here, you can go show detail. I want to try the detail as opposed to what we did before. So here we made a connection, and there this is what this is called, right? I'm just going to make this little connection wider so we can see it separately a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to click on the segue. So the segue itself needs a name, right? And the identifier is the add edit segue. So let's put that in there. Add edit segue. Okay, so that you need to do as well. All right, so these are all prep steps. I'm like, add this, make sure I have it, da da da. Next, now let's grab our user interface from our in-class exercise 5, right? So we can save us some time again. Now, there's some issues I noticed that no one talked to me about last time, and I was like, wait, that's wrong. Doesn't matter. Made it work, but still. Here's what's wrong. If we look at the old interface, this is also called actors, right? This should have been called short description, right, or whatever. So I'm just going to go here, and before we copy it, I'm going to make that change. So that way it doesn't say actors, it's going to say short description. I don't know, maybe you didn't have that. I did. It was my error. Other things that are a problem is the constraints. When we copy things across, we had some cancel button, update button, and a navigation item that popped up, right? But I didn't have any constraints at all. And that might cause issues when I bring this over from what we have here. Couple ways to copy this, right? You could try and select all here. So again, I'm selecting my add edit view controller, and I want to select everything in here, kind of thing. That could be one way of working. You can see clearly that didn't work, right? So now what about if I went inside the view controller and selected everything like this? That works. So be careful about how you do everything, and that's okay. That can work. So that copies everything. Why is this a better way than doing it over here? I find that the layout is preserved, right? A little bit nicer. So here, again, I'm going to go here to edit just to stop anything from happening. And I'm going to go to copy. And again, you could do Command C here. And then I'm going to switch back to my ICE 8. And just like I did last time, I'm going to click in here, right, like right up here, and then paste, right? And notice that you might get something like this. Do not let this stuff lie. Just pull it into place, right? So kind of pull it in. It should fit, right? And it should fit to the point where it's going to align things for you. Okay, now make sure that it's not too low, but it should be about a line like this. There we go. All right, so that is, for the most part, everything we need, except we are missing one thing. Before, when we did core data, right, with core data, we did not care about the movie ID. We care now. We care now because the movie ID is something we have, and we have to take care of it, right? So we have a title, studio, genre, directors, writers, actors, and blah, 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 but we don't have a movie ID. We want to add that in. So, strategies. What I want to do is, in the user interface, let me just zoom in now, and let's work specifically with that user interface on the right. I want to take the movie label and expand it. Just a little bit of time I'm going to spend here, not too much, just so that way it hugs the right and left sides. And I'm just going to make it, like I said before, so that it's centered. All right, that's one thing I want to do. Next, I want to pull down all of this stuff. So the rest of this stuff here. So just going to kind of go down here and select everything except for the buttons. Right, so there's that stuff. And uncheck, deselect the movie itself. So this, edit movie, well actually it doesn't really matter. We can pull everything down a little bit closer and then we'll move it up, okay? So again, what I want to do is I want to just pull it down so that it's aligned but closer to the buttons. And I want to actually pull the buttons down just a slight bit as well. Just, there we go, just a slight bit. Okay. Still in the safe area, but a little bit more room. We can pull this up now, right? So I want to move it so this is at the top. There we go. And maybe a little bit further up. There we go. Now, we need another space for this, and we may have to pull things down one more time. So again, I'm just going to kind of select both of those two items, and then I'm going to option drag those two and make a copy of them. And you can clearly see that that's not going to work. I need more room than this. So undo. And then scroll down again and then do more of that lovely work, which is, let's pull this down even more, right? Not so far, Tom, not so far. Ooh. Well, that's one thing that's just terrible. So let's just undo and undo, and let's just do it by hand. Again, I want to stay within the safe area. So the way to notice is this is our safe area. Anything beyond the safe area is not going to work. All right, so our buttons are lower. Let's lower everything again. So again, I'm just going to select all here. But not the title. And move it down a little bit more just to make room for the other object. Okay, good. That should be enough room now. And now we can kind of option drag these two things. So we're going to option drag these ones up. And that can work. All right, so we have extra items, 2 titles. We want to make the first one, that first title, we want to call it up here at the top. It's going to be movie ID. Movie ID. That's what that's going to be. And likewise, in the outliner, let's also make it so that it says movie ID label, because that's what it is. Okay, and this text field right here, which is the title text field, is not going to be the title text field, but rather it is going to be the movie ID text field. Excellent. Yay. Are you with me? User interface done. Okay, so again, we're not doing anything new. We copied everything, moved it across, and it should be, for the most part, okay. Okay, so that's good. Now, the assistant editor, which is what we need to do. By the way, if I'm moving too fast, remember we have the video, right? But there should be nothing that's new for you. You should be able to, you should have seen this stuff before a million times already. Exaggerated. Yes, at least twice. A million times, right?
This time with faster studio.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what?
This one's a little more
This
snap.
one.
Well, just a little bit more. Notice that there's none of these are connected. We cannot take for granted that when you cut things across, they're connected. And so let's connect them. So again, like we did before, our add, edit, title label is this one, all right? Our update button is this one. That's the update button. Our movie ID text field, now I've already planned it in there, is this one, right? And let's keep going and you can do the rest of them, okay? So you keep doing while I'm doing it, and so you'll have, you know, kind of, you'll be up to date just like I am. It's a one-time cost, you know, for this to happen, and they're pretty much in the right order, except for maybe one. So it shouldn't be too much of a pain to do it. This is the one that's not in order, the year. I kind of always go left to right, you know, so that typically these two could be switched out. But anyway, whatever. I'm just nitpicking now. Okay, so now that I've connected all those things, all of my outlets are connected. You can see that all these little circles are filled, right? I can kind of zoom in here and you can see them all connected. And this is good. Now we need the two buttons, the update and cancel press events. So there's the cancel button. That's the cancel button there. And this is the IB action for the update. IB standing for interface builder. And my friends, for the most part, we should have now everything in place and connected. Okay, since that's true, let's make sure we put this up on GitHub. So again, back to this. So we're going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added add edit view controller UI, which is what that is. Git push add edit movie view controller, whatever. All right. I got no errors. Do you have errors? Warnings are okay because that's user interface stuff. All right, at least it's okay for now. All right, back to this. Let's get rid of let's dismiss the assistant editor. We don't need that anymore, right? And then what we can do is, in here, we can run it and see if this actually builds. Let's do it. So build, baby, build. And let's see what happens. And it builds, right? Now, things you can do. You should be able to click on something and it should do this, the segue, right? And what's the problem? Take a look at this, our interface. The interface is too big, right? So a couple problems. One, the iPhone 14 Pro Max didn't come across. So let's go back and take a look. There's iPhone 14 Pro Max, right? It's good. How about this one? Is this iPhone 14 Pro Max? This should be the same, right? When I click on a view controller, these two things should be emulated the exact same. So these are pretty low, is what this is telling me, right? This is pretty low. And so there are some constraints we can put in, but here, let's move in and just adjust the layout just a bit, otherwise it'll be unusable. Okay, a couple of things. So we could probably move the buttons up a little bit more. Okay, so they're probably pretty low. Let's move these buttons up so that we can see them. And I'm just going to nudge them very gently. The last time I nudged them too much, and then the lag between me being here in the network is pretty extensive. All right, let's try it again. Let's see if that's good enough. Can we see the buttons now? So I click on that stuff. Kind of can see them, but they're still pretty low. And you know why? Look, this short description takes up quite a bit of space, right? So, I mean, there's a couple ways we can do this. We could shorten the description and crunch it in there. It will, because it's a text view, text field, it will shrink. It'll give you a little scroll bar anyway. So we don't have to see it all like this. And again, this is a thing. The other way to test before we do anything to this thing is, does it make a difference if we're doing it like this, right? Or if we change the segue so that it is to show. That is the detail segue, okay? So the type of, that's show detail. Let's do show and see the difference between these two segues. So again, if I was to run this thing, I'll stop it and rerun it, then we should see that it's the exact same thing, okay? Because of the way we're transitioning, the answer is it doesn't really matter, right? We have a little bit of headroom also up here. We could pull everything up even more, even though it doesn't seem like we can, okay? So this is definitely another option, all right, where we can pull everything up and keep everything the same the way it looks. Okay, let's try that first. So again, the way to do that would be to just pull this up so it touches the top, right? Just to give us a little bit more and so that we can adjust what we have. Again, I'm going to kind of just select everything here again, one more time. And what I'm going to do here is nudge it up by using the arrow keys, the entire interface. So again, I'm just going to kind of nudge up, nudge up, nudge up, nudge up until we get to a point where it's just a little bit higher up than before, okay? Kind of right up here. I don't want to go too much higher than this because then we're going to hit that safe area that we don't want that to happen. So then let's run this again and see what happens. And now we see this is good, and we kind of see the buttons, they're almost there, but they're still too low, and I think we can now do our efforts with, first of all, it's a pretty big field, right, that we have in there, and let's see if we can reduce the size of the field a little bit. So back to this, we're just going to kind of scrunch it in a little bit, maybe make it this big. I'm thinking something like, I don't know, just by eye, using my eye, I'm thinking something like 75. Okay, is a good number. And then we can just nudge these up. So I select all these ones, right? And then let's nudge those up so that they do not do that. This is what happens because of my lag. This is networking stuff. I'll wait till it's finished, and then I'm just undo. It's going to keep climbing till the top. 100%. Yeah. Whenever it feels like giving me control again. It's just because this is the network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about that. Point is, before it gives me control again, what I want you guys to think about is that you need to fit everything in, right? Here's what I want you to do while you're waiting for me. Try it out. See if you can do all up. Add a movie, delete a movie, edit a movie, do all those things, right? And then I will simply just disconnect and try again, right? Sometimes that's okay, like disconnecting and just getting back into my MacBook Pro. So here, look, by the way, I have both up. Here's my MacBook Pro and here's my Mac Studio. So I can always get into either one or the other, right? Sometimes I like to keep the other one, the older one there as well, because this way, oh yeah, it's cycling. It probably went some phantom zone. Well, no, you can see that it's working. So there's like me working with something else. Look, here's Visual Studio for Mac, right? But there it is. So I actually have control back. Let's just undo now. Undo. Undo. There we go. So problems with nudging up, right? Let's try that again, and this time I'm just going to drag it up. I find that dragging it up works a little bit more, and at least on the network. There we go. All right, let's try that now and see how that works. So we're going to just go back into it and see how it works. And yay, okay, that's pretty good. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that because I got a little bit of description. I got my update. I got my cancel button and everything else. And for the most part, it should work, right? Let's try it out. So I add a new movie. And let's add in, my movie. And we'll add a title in this, like my title. Oh yeah, my movie ID. Well, actually, it'll take it because it's a string, right? It doesn't care. So that's 22, right? My title, my studio, my genre. You can put more than one if you want. My director. It's just a throwaway anyway. We're just trying to add my writers, whatever that is, and a famous actor. And the length will be, 240 minutes. I don't know, really long movie. And 2023. We just made this movie. A short description is going to be movie description. Well, I would leave that in. And MPA rating is going to be R. And we'll say that the critics rating is 5 to test out the red color. And then we'll click on add, and it should take us back to our in here, right? And you can see that if I scroll down, there's our new movie and my title and everything else in here. I've got a couple of them in here that I added in from before, right? Now, unless you're using mine, this is one of yours, right? And then what we can do is we can just delete it, and it's going to ask me, do I want to delete it? I do, and I can delete it again and delete it, and I do. So one thing that we're going to see is I'm going to ask you to do this. Please do this. Do not erase the movie database because it's going to make it difficult for you guys to use this thing, right? Please don't do that, right? So, in fact, what you could do is just add and modify your own. I know someone modified the matrix's rating to 7. That's fine, and so we can do that. We can make more, put it back at something like, I think it was 8.7 or something like that, right? And then update it and see if that works. So all of it works, okay? Let's put this up on GitHub now. So this is our version that we're going to go with for today. So now this is our final version. And let's talk about it. And we'll say final version of ICE 8 for iOS. Git push. Now this is my part with you. This is me showing you what I want you guys to do. Now I want to discuss it with you, but we're going to do that after the break. It's 5:10. I've talked for about an hour, and I think it's a good thing to stop, take a short break, and we come back. I want to go through it with you a little bit and discuss how it works, why I made the choice I did, right? It wasn't just ChatGPT, okay? It wasn't about that. It was other choices that I had to make, because there's a lot of different directions you can go with an API, and I want to discuss all that with you when we get back. Okay, so let's do that. Let's take a short break. We're sitting at 5:10, 11. Let's take 10 minutes. We'll be back at 5:20 approximately, and then we'll get some hydration and wash and break and all that stuff. Okay, it's going to come out of this.